Psalms 78. God's kindness to rebellious Israel. New King James. Let's see if we can knock it out like a champion. It's a long one. A contemplation of Asaph. Give ear to my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in no parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, telling to the generation to come the praise of the Lord, and his strength, and his wonderful works that he has done. For he established a testimony in Jacob, and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children, that the generations to come might know them, the children who would be born, that they may arise and declare them to their children, that they may set their hope in God, and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and may not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not set in hearts aright, and whose spirit was not faithful to God. The children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back in the days of the battle. They did not keep the covenant of God. They refused to walk in his law, and forgot his works and his wonders that he had shown them. Marvelous things he did in the sight of their fathers, in the land of Egypt, in the field of Zoans. He divided the seas and caused them to pass through, and he made the waters stand up like a heap. In the daytime also he led them with a cloud, and all the night with the light of fire. He split the rocks in the wilderness, and gave them drink in abundance like the depths. He also brought a stream out of the rock, and caused the water to run down like a river. But they sinned even more against him, by rebellion against the Most High in the wilderness, and they tested God in their hearts by asking for the food of their fancy. Yes, they spoke against God. They said, can God prepare a table in the wilderness? Behold, he struck the rocks so that the water gushed out and the streams of the overflowed. Can he give bread also? Can he provide meat for his people? Therefore, the Lord heard this and was furious. So a fire was kindled against Jacob, and the anger also came up against Israel, because they did not believe in God, did not trust in his salvation. Yet he had commanded the clouds above, and opened the doors of heaven. He rained down manna to them to eat, and given them the bread of heaven. Men ate angel food, and he sent them food to the full. He caused in the east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his powers he brought in the south wind. He also rained meat on them like the dust, and feathered fowl like the sands of the seas. And he let them fall in the midst of their camp, and all around their dwelling. So they ate and were well filled, and for he gave them their own desire. They were not deprived of their cravings, but while their food was still in their mouths, the wrath of God came against them, and slew the stoutest of them, and struck down the choice of the men of Israel. In spite of this, they still sinned, and did not believe in his wondrous works, and therefore their days he consumed in futility, and their years in fear. And when he slew them, then they sought him, and they returned and sought earnestly for God. And then they remembered that God was their rock, and the Most High God their Redeemer. Nevertheless, they flattered him with their mouth, and they lied to him with their tongue, and for their hearts was not steadfast with them, and nor were they faithful to his covenant. But he, being full of compassion, forgave them of their iniquities, and did not destroy them. Yes, many a times he turned his anger away, and did not stir up all his wrath. For he remembered that they were but flesh, a breath that passes away and does not come again. How often they provoked him in the wilderness, and grieved him in the desert. And yes, again and again they tempted God, and limited the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power in the day when he redeemed them from the enemy, when he worked his signs in Egypt, and his wonders in the field of Zoans, and turned their rivers into blood, and their streams, and they could not drink. And he sent swarms of flies among them, which devoured them, and the frogs which destroyed them. He also gave their crops to the caterpillars, and their labors to the locusts, furnace, and he destroyed their vines with hail, and their sycamore trees with frost. He also gave up their cattle to hail, and their flocks to the fury lightnings. He cast on them the fierceness of his anger, and wrath, indignations, and trouble by sending angels to destruction among them. He made a path for his anger, and he did not spare their souls from death, but gave their life over to the plague, and destroyed all the firstborns in Egypt, and the first of their strength in the tents of Ham. But he made his own people go forth like sheep, and guided them in the wilderness like a rock. Like a flock he guided them, and he led them safely so that they did not fear. But the sea overwhelmed their enemies, and he brought them to his holy borders, the mountain in which his right hand had acquired. And he also drove out the nations before them, eluded them in their inheritance surveys, and he made the tribes of Israel dwell in their tents. 78:56. Wow. Yet they tested and provoked the Most High God, and did not keep his testimonies, but turned back and acted unfaithfully like their fathers. They were turned aside like a deceitful bow. For they provoked him to anger with their high places, and moved him to jealousy with their carved images. And when God heard this, he was furious, and greatly abhorred Israel, and so that he forsook the tabernacle of Shalah, and the tents he had placed among the men, and delivered his strength into captivity, and his glory into the enemy's hands. He also gave his people over to the sword, and was furious with his inheritance. The fire consumed their young men, and their maidens were not given in marriage, and their priests fell by the sword, and their widows were made no lamentations. And then the Lord awoke as from sleep, and like a mighty man who shout because of wine, and he beat back his enemies, and he put them to a perpetual reproach. Moreover, he rejected the tents of Joseph, and did not choose to the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like the heights, and like the earth which he had established forever. He also chose David his servant, and he took him from the sheepfold, and from following the ills, and the young, and he brought him to the sheepfolds before Jacob, his people, and Israel, and his inheritance. So he shepherded them according to their integrity of his heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hand. Wow, that was a mighty one. Thank you for helping me get through it.